Hello and good morning. It is 11:01 a.m. It is January 3rd. It is Saturday morning, and I am making another video. I made a video earlier today, and it was just while I was in bed, and I made it on my cell phone, so I didn't have any pictures or anything on it. And today is Saturday, and I'm trying to get into the Saturday vibe. Okay, so I feel like good color for today is teal. So I'm wearing this teal turtleneck, and I'm just letting you guys check it out. I like teal a lot. Okay, so anyway, I was thinking about how oftentimes people do not understand like what constitutes, reporting somebody because they feel like maybe somebody might be different. And I've noticed, okay, let me back up a little bit. Okay, I had noticed that throughout my targeting, when I would try to interact with people and try to get information from them, like for example, I remember thinking that perhaps maybe Callie was either Joel's cousin or his aunt or something, and I really do not remember what she looks like. All I remember is that she was our landlord for a very short period of time. And I realized, okay, this is even when well, maybe it was a little bit after I left Joel. It doesn't matter. Okay, the point is that I was talking to her, and we kind of got in this little altercation over the phone, right? And then her response was, I can call somebody on with BT from BT, what do you call it, BPD or whatever. It's like I notice that a lot of times when people get in arguments and they feel as though the argument is like pressing them too much, they'll sit there and say, "Oh well, I'm going to go ahead and call the cops on you, and they will be on my side, regardless whether they are right or they're wrong." So that tells me that they know on some level that there's cops that are crooked, right? Because I would say that a cop would need to understand what constitutes breaking the law before they would enact on something like that. Okay, so let me tell you, I was thinking about the CIA. Now, I want to say hello to the CIA because I do understand that you got involved in my targeting. Okay, and one of the things that reasons why you were involved in my targeting is okay, I do have a history of being CB Berganza, okay, but see, I know that's kind of weird to talk about, but still, people must have reported me to the CIA, and you guys were probably interested in my story through religious ties, and some of the reasons that I'm understanding from an intuitive level, okay, is that where people were talking about me possibly having a relationship and possibly maybe having intimacy outside of the institution of marriage. Okay, and like I said, you're gonna do. I'm pretty sure as a the CIA is. Let me give you the definition of what CIA is. Okay, what CIA does or what they're supposed to be doing. Okay, it's the Central Intelligence Agency, and it's a civil foreign intelligence service of the federal government of the United States, and it's tasked with advancing national security through collecting and analyzing intelligence from around the world and conducting covert operations. Now, some of your operations, okay, we know in the past were not always on the up and up. And because you do deal with foreign relations at times, this gave you guys back 50 some odd years ago when I came popping out, right? This gave you guys ample time to play games, okay? To, implant people, traffic people, whatever, okay? Because people do break the law, okay? And I get it, okay? So let's move on from that. But my point is that people within certain forms of law enforcement, whether that be CIA, FBI, police, sheriff, whatever, and it goes down the line, okay? People need to understand what constitutes a crime. Okay, they need to understand what constitutes a crime. Now, in this case, I believe that people may have seen Vladimir Putin, right? Somebody who was associated with the Christian religion. So, in their mind, because they are so brainwashed and they think that religion is the ultimate authority, they honestly thought that by reporting this issue, because this is before I even knew about Vladimir Putin, right? Apparently I'm getting intuitive messages that people were reporting this concern about Vladimir Putin maybe having a relationship with me, and perhaps maybe this was going to compromise his association with whatever his religious faith is or whatever. Okay, that it does not constitute somebody getting, what I'm saying is that does not constitute harassment. It does not constitute a reason to look into me with suspicion. You see what I'm saying? It's like there's sometimes people come up with these inquiries or they try to call cops or law enforcement on issues that do not have any sort of legal binding, or they should have no legal kind of consequence. Now, if somebody was concerned about his spiritual life, like for let's just say, for example, okay, that Vladimir Putin was a member of the LDS Church, for example, because I really don't know what religion he is, okay, but let's just say he was, okay. So they were concerned about this, okay, as their spiritual family, then they need to take that to the elders within that congregation or the bishops within that congregation, and then he and those people can have that discussion, okay. This is what I'm talking about, being responsible, okay, and then trying to punish me because if this was true, okay, that if Vladimir Putin was saying nice things to me, or people were noticing that he was taking an interest in me, then that should have been an issue relating to his church. You do not punish the person that this person is interested in. You see what I'm saying? And so, also, I do know that people talk about watch list a lot, okay? And what watch lists are pretty much blacklist, okay? They're blacklist in a way where if people put these people on these lists, okay, that I obviously believe that you guys must, I guess somehow it gets coordinated in ways where, like, for example, somebody might have a legitimate reason why they should be concerned about maybe a next door neighbor. I remember back when I lived in Lancaster, there was a guy who built bombs, right? He built bombs, and he was not even ashamed to hide the fact that he built bombs because he had bomb making material stacked on the side of his house, okay? So he had these sort of things, right? And so he would, people were calling on him, reporting him, and then he ended up having to have his house bulldozed because he refused to move it, right? In these cases, he was a threat to public safety. He was a public he was a threat to public safety, right? Because he had, bomb material. He seemed like, nonchalant about moving it or doing anything with it. So in this case, it would be a legitimate reason to involve something like maybe the police department, the FBI, depending on, like, he could be making bombs to hurt certain groups of people. So in this case, yes, I could see, making a big deal out of it. But what people were trying to hurt me for was absolutely ridiculous. Okay, and something about the intuitive message I'm getting has something to do, of course, with the bank transactions and all these other things. Okay, so like I said, when it comes to vigilantes, oftentimes vigilantes, in their attempts to uphold the law, some sort of law that they make up themselves, they end up breaking the laws themselves. Okay, so I understand like what watch lists are. Technically, watch list, I mean, they're illegal. Okay, why? Because in California, specifically, California does have blacklisting laws. Okay, so everybody is entitled to employment. Now, this intuitive message I'm getting is that college is no longer an important or focal point in Bakersfield, California. So these particular ideas that I'm coming up with, or this intuitive message that I'm getting, is that this was the idea of a lot of people from college. I know a lot of people wanted to shame me because of what I had to deal with and what little, what do you call it, college education that I do have. So they wanted to make me feel bad, right? Because they bullied me in school, and these people have abused me every place I ever went, right? So they always wanted to smear things into my face, okay? So they don't understand what constitutes something that is a public threat, what constitutes something that's illegal, or what's something that might be considered maybe something to avoid within their religion, but what is actually legal all the way around. Okay, so like let's just say, for example, somebody thought that I was a promiscuous woman, which obviously I'm not. Okay, I cannot be arrested for that. I can't be arrested for that because there's nothing on the books that says that I'm not allowed to. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a promiscuous person, but I understand that this is one of the rumors that they came up with. Okay, so those issues are more relating to religion. Those issues relate specifically to religion, not legal. They're not legal. Okay. Now, if I was now, what would be punishable is if I was a promiscuous person and I was charging money for it. Why? Because prostitution is illegal in the state of California. So what I'm trying to get people to understand is that oftentimes law enforcement is used as a form of retaliation or some form of I want to bully somebody, so let me bring my friend who might be along to the CIA, or maybe I know a friend in law enforcement, so let me bring them into this argument so that you can, I could feel like I have extra protection. So what I recognize it is nothing more than corruption. See, because like I said, like for example, I know there were some people who were upset because like some of these women within the group were talking about me wearing clothes or whatever. Okay, well the clothes are on the rack in the store. Okay, and there is no age limit to buy them. They are open and available for anyone to buy. So a lot of times people were like falling back on this whole story about, well, she's a burden baby. I'm a burden baby only when it comes to religion. When it comes to religion, I am a burden baby. To them, it's like, oh, but see, we know why and how these burden babies came about, right? So if somebody wants to try to demean me, right, in the workplace because their pastor wanted them to look at me as a burden baby, as less than, well, then guess what? You don't bring your religion into this workplace. It is what it is, okay? And so this is why I'm trying to clarify things and why we have all these entanglements, why people do not understand what constitutes, breaking the law. What is the law to these people? They don't know. Okay, they confuse what they may not be able to do within their congregations, and then they end up inadvertently imposing religious ideas and forcing the religion down other people's throat. And not only that, they convince members of groups like yourself or the FBI or police or whatever. So people need to understand what constitutes breaking the law. Okay, wearing nice clothes does not constitute breaking the law. Okay, neither does a woman wearing hair pieces, women who wear makeup. I just talked about Rhonda Van Tassel. Rhonda Van Tassel is a Mormon. Okay, she's a Mormon, and she was one of the women that I got to know when, oh gosh, this is like 20 years ago. This goes way, way back. Okay, and I know that a lot of women, a lot of white women like to get some tans. Now, when I was working for Rhonda, she was primarily working for like the tanning industry. Okay, and then she kind of moved into other forms of beauty modification enhancement type stuff. I see billboards on her stuff all the time. This is a Mormon woman, and I ended up getting what do you call it, bullied, ostracized, because I'm somebody who does prioritize beauty. Whereas, why is it okay for Rhonda to do it and not me? And the reason why is because of this brainwashing. And another message I'm getting right now is something to do with Vladimir Putin. And like I said, I'm just becoming aware of the whole Vladimir Putin thing. Okay, so my point is that this might frustrate certain people in the public who might be maybe fans of Vladimir Putin, or somebody who I don't know why or how anyone could think that this would be okay. Like, for example, knowing that people are created in this sort of manner, knowing that they have been deprived, any sort of real friendship, and for people to want to be in groups to try to prevent him from having true friends, to me is absolutely sick. Okay, but this is the mindset of some people. Okay, and like I said, I'm the last to know about what goes on, who people, and a lot of times people speculate that I'm seeing somebody, and I'm the last person to know. Okay, like I don't, all throughout this time while I was dealing with my targeting, I literally had no idea what was all this was going on. So I had to figure it all out. All I knew was, and the main point was, is that this was affecting my ability to get a job, and I was very resentful towards it. So I wasn't really focused on like, kingdom spouses and who the love aspect of it. And this is what really pissed me off. This is what everybody seems consumed with, and I'm somebody who is focused mainly on the main thing is my survival. Okay, don't get me wrong. I mean, I like Vladimir Putin, but it's like, these people talk about these things because this is what they do in their background. This is their life. This is how they handle things. And the reason why they handle things is because they were raised differently than me. I don't have a foundation. Okay, so the only thing I care about me is working. That's it. I don't have any reason to care about anything else, okay? About, maybe get, or maybe and it never crosses my mind to think about marriage as a form of financial protection. Why? Because I feel as though me being by myself would just put me in a more vulnerable position. This is why. So this is why I resent people trying to make it their business. This is why I resent people in their outside intrusion. This is why I resent people not understanding employment law, because they act as if everything that's very personal, and I deserve to keep it personal. I deserve to keep my private life personal for my own protection. Okay, and I feel as though I was exploited in this issue. Okay, I was totally exploited in this issue, and then opened up for attack. You know what I mean? Which I showed and demonstrated in my newsletter about what happened with the bank transactions and what happened with the retraction of the community partnership when they originally funded my PG&E bill, and then they decided to retract it. See, my point is that this is a sort of these kind of organized crime syndicates where we have people manipulating my employment, and then when they're screwing up, then they want to alert this particular agency and this particular person, and then what they end up doing is managing my life, okay, without my consent. You know what I mean? It's like now they end up, and now they ended up like literally impoverishing me, okay? And somebody needs to be held accountable for them ruining my credit. You know what I mean? It's not like I didn't try to work. I did try to work, okay? But these people were creating problems for me. So my point is, and they were creating problems for me over issues that I had every right to do. Every right to do. Okay, so for this reason, okay, I think it's important for people in the members of like CIA to need to understand that people have their religions, and their religious choices are not supposed to be used for as the criteria as to determine whether they should work, whether they should even live. Okay, because obviously these people who created these problems, they are not in any way upstanding or righteous in any way. Okay, so the message I'm getting right now, it is now clear that people should, if we would have followed, people would have followed employment law, all of this never would have happened. They would have never happened. Okay, like from these people talking about my hair, then trying to block it, making a big deal out of it, continually harassing me for every single last job that I went to, the fake job interviews, all of it, all of it. They should have known they were harassing me, and I do understand Bruce Collins was involved in it. And this is another thing you need to understand. You need to understand, number one, stop using religious criteria to get involved in these sort of things, okay? You need to also be careful about who you listen to. Just like Rashawn came with his stupid, you don't ever listen to Rashawn. Okay, so Rashawn ended up dragging down a lot of important people, okay? And it's why, because I understand people know each other. They have their networks, okay? And this is what I'm talking about. Like a person wants to do something bad, and because they know a friend in BPD or they know somebody in law enforcement, they feel like they can stand tall and they feel confident about being able to do something that is actually contrary to the law, right? And because this law enforcement agent, whatever, may be just as ignorant as they are, it's like the blind leading the blind, right? So because he's using he is complying with this person simply because they're a part of their network, simply because they may have went to school together, simply because they might be friends, but yet you're actually putting your career on the line for something that's just not worth it. So there needs to be some sort of criteria to follow when it comes to you CIA groups or FBI or any sort of law enforcement group, whether the big macro scale or the micro scale. There needs to be some sort of criteria. Okay, so I personally feel as though it should obviously, anything that relates to religion. Now, I understand religion sometimes can get dangerous, okay? So you need to determine whether this particular religion is of danger. And dangers usually indicate something that could be physical, and it can also be psychological. Any form of terrorism, okay? Any form of terrorism, you need to be aware of, okay? Obviously, I'm not a terrorist, but I will tell you who was a terrorist. I would say Bruce Collins was a terrorist, okay? By constantly creating these sort of psychological dramas, the harassment, the being followed from one place to another, the being, encouraging employers to blacklist me. And what is important is that also when it comes to religious standards, obviously that should be thrown out. But you also need to be aware of people in ex relationships. To me, for Bruce to do what he did, okay, is very immature of him. And it's something I do not forgive, okay? And I don't care what happens to him, okay? Because I'm suffering for his problems. And I never volunteered to do this. Now, he was already married when he was bothering me, okay? I would like to know why he would think that it was okay for him to sit here and try to set standards for my life, for his own entertainment. Okay, so when it comes to Bruce Collins, I say, you know what? That dude needs to live, and he needs to go out and die in the street, is what he needs to do. Okay, I don't care about Bruce Collins. Bruce Collins is a wicked person, and I do believe that you ended up supporting this man when he had no right to be supported. Okay, and then he turns around and abuses my son. Okay, so no, this man does not have any reason to hold his head up high. I used to wonder, like, there were times, I remember back in the early 2000s, I want to say 2001 or 2002, somewhere around there, okay? I was working for BT Promotions at the time. So I decided, Bruce Collins must have had something to do with that job in some way, okay? Because he called up and he wanted me to come out and visit San Francisco. And I said, okay. Obviously, I took my son down there. So while I went down to San Francisco, he was already dating some other girl. She was like a blonde girl. She had like a little short haircut. I would say she looked, she was cute, okay? And so I figured that I was going to leave Houston with him, Bruce, and his girlfriend. And I went out and enjoyed the day in San Francisco all by myself. I didn't sit here and be like, Bruce, I want you back. None of that. None of that happened. Okay. I have been civil with Bruce for, even though I never wanted him to have anything to do with my life or my son's life, after he did have something to do with my son's life, I was at least civil to him. I never sat there and tried to, get him back or anything. Now, I remember in the 90s, he would do a lot of head games to me. Like, I love you. And then he would be like, being all distant. And of course, I was like, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? This is the story of so many women. Okay. But when I realized that people cannot be compatible, he's not compatible with me. You know what I mean? I realized I don't need this person. So him coming into my life, attacking me in any way was completely inappropriate. Completely inappropriate. You know what I mean? This was something that he must have done to bolster his own ego. And I'm going to tell you, when it comes to organizations like the CIA, FBI, law enforcement, you need to make sure that you do not get involved with people's relationships. Because you might know a person, like a dude from the CIA, because Bruce used to be a sound technician. Okay, so let's just give you a scenario. You work for the CIA and Bruce works as for sound technician, and you guys are at some sort of, I don't know, rave, because that's what he used to do. He used to do a lot of raves. Okay, so he's sitting here pissed off, he's drunk, he's talking to his friend from the CIA, and guess what? And it's easy for a white person to turn another white person against a person of color. We can see this. And this is exactly what Bruce used to his advantage, right? Because I don't have a voice. I couldn't possibly be right. Bruce has to be, righteous. He has to be righteous because he's white. And we know in their mind, white is right. But guess what? At this time, white is really dead wrong. Okay. And it's been wrong several times. Okay. But you don't see it. Okay. And you use your biases to help this person. You know, you use your biases to help somebody. So don't judge a book by its cover. So that number one, stay out of relationship arguments. If you are a member of like some sort of government system, you have a respectable position in the CIA, FBI, police department, sheriff, whatever you are, okay? Do not take personal sides because this is exactly what this is. Okay, Bruce needs to be held accountable for everything that he created. And yes, you know what? I'm throwing the full book at him. If he is not dead, I want him to be pressed. I want charges pressed on him to the highest possible ability, to the highest level. Okay, and no, I mean, I think he's the kind of person, and this whole idea of, and I want to make this very clear, and it needs to be a popular understanding among this forced marriage type ideas and this idea of kingdom spouses from hell. Okay, because Bruce Collins, I don't care what kind of job he offers me. I want that man out of my life forever. Okay, I get very offended by people thinking, well, I gotta love. They call them love offers. Like you got these tarot readers, right? Tarot readers refer to like love offers. Okay, you mean these binding nightmare drama things that I have no interest in being a part of? Is what a man can buy a woman because he helps get her a job? See, this is illegal. Okay. And so this is what he sucked me up into. Okay. And what I've been drowning in for the last 32 years that I just recently came to find out that my mother and Lisa were working alongside Bruce's family and they were sitting here giving it the thumbs up without my consent. Okay. I might be a burden baby in the Christian congregations, but we don't live in the Christian congregation and it's not Christianity that sets the rules and the guidelines. Okay. We go by secular law. Unfortunately, I want Bruce to pay the consequence for what he did. He needs to understand. Okay, that I am not somebody who it should be trivialized. And what's most important, he needs to understand that I made this decision to not have him a part of my son's life for good reason. I want him to understand what he did. Okay, and I want him out of here. I want him out of here. Okay. I don't feel sorry for him. I'm disgusted. I'm disturbed. Every day I wake up and I am dealing with the residual effects of what he did. Okay. With no invite. Like I never did anything to initiate any of his garbage. Okay. So he has no excuse for it. Okay. It was a hate crime. Period. And the message I'm getting right now is something about Valley Strong Credit Union. Do I believe that he was associated with that transaction? Most likely he probably was. Okay. And what was his logic? Oh, because he's a Christian, right? Or he's a Christian. He doesn't even play an active role within his own religion. He is barely a publisher. And like I said, it is not based on religion. He's basically cause stalking me, right? He's trying to cause stalk me to I can conform to a religion so that if Sarah doesn't work out, or maybe Sarah left him, she should have left him by now. You know what I mean? Any man that treats a woman like an option needs to be forgotten. This is how I look at it, okay? Because maybe this is what he was trying to do. Like, well, I should have not worked out with Sarah. I can always hook up with Maria. No, you cannot hook up with Maria, Bruce. Okay? I want you out of my life forever. Okay? Now, apparently, what am I getting here? I'm very glad that Trump supports my and protects my stance and rights. I do appreciate that. Okay? I do get the intuitive feeling that originally you may have thought and listened to what the Collins said. Okay? And the reason why you were probably looking at it from a religious standpoint. Okay? This kind of brainwashing has been going on and doing these sort of numbers over a lot of people. Why? Because some people, they hear about religion, they hear the word Christian, and they automatically think this is a moral issue. So they feel like they need to support it. Okay. And see, this is the biggest trick that you could ever put on somebody. Okay. Because a lot of people, you need to understand, a lot of people use religion as only as an excuse. Okay. But truth be told, I haven't had anything to do with Terry Collins. I don't even remember. Okay. The last time I saw Terry Collins, I remember, I think it was when I was living on Adidas Court. It could have been around 2014, maybe 13, or somewhere around there. Okay. I just remember her peeking her head through the door, and I remember thinking how intrusive it was. And I knew that she was there to pick up Houston. I kept thinking, Houston, hurry up, leave. I don't want to see this person. I don't want to see her. Okay. And then the message I'm getting right now is that yes, there are angels up in those clouds. She may not be here right now. She may not be here. She may not be a part of, the world right now. I mean, she might have died. I don't know. Okay. But whatever the case is, I'm trying to get you guys to understand that yes, you are responsible for national security. And I am not ever a threat to national security. I love my country. Okay. And I appreciate it. I think a lot of people have a different, if you ask people about why they love the United States, everybody's going to come up with a different answer. You know what I mean? But I obviously looked at the United States as a place of freedom. And see, this is why C.B. Braganza came here. This is why a lot of immigrants came here, right? Because they did not want to have to deal with the oppressive nature of countries that ruled by what they called religion. Why? Because they wanted to avoid this sort of tyranny. Okay? And see, what Bruce did was he was a terrorist. I'm going to reclassify him as a terrorist, right? He's sitting here threatening me, preventing me from having public access to certain things because I'm not sitting here bending to his will. And the reason why, he doesn't care about my afterlife, he doesn't care about my soul. It has nothing to do with that. It's all self-serving. So I could sit here and bow down and cater to him. If there is some way to put him in front of a firing squad, I wish you would. Okay? Seriously, I am beyond pissed off. Especially when I think of how this stuff works out. As somebody who works, like, for example, in management, right? When I was giving these sort of videos, lessons talking about employment law, I was hoping that people would take notice, what people would understand, like it would click immediately, okay? But it didn't. It didn't. You know what I mean? And like, so the reason why people were loyal to Bruce is because Bruce was orchestrating an illegal network. That's why. Okay, and some of these people who were part of this illegal network ended up paying with their lives. So what they thought was actually good was actually a bad idea. See, Bruce, how can I say this? The positions that were filled that Bruce was trying to one up me from, is that he wanted to exclude me from employment opportunities. He had some sort of vendetta against me. And see, maybe he had a vendetta against me because I moved on. You know what I mean? And see, for a lot of white men, for a black woman to move on from them enrages him, right? Because he thinks he's God's gift to the earth, okay? Just because you're white doesn't mean I'm going to want you. Okay, but he thought that this was the case. Okay, I have known some repulsive white men. There was this one dude who had so much grease in the back of his head. It's like it was okay. I'm not going to go into that, but anyway, my point is that just because you're white does not mean I'm going to be attracted to you. Okay, and so, but this is what is in his head. He thought that he could just do anything, and I'm going to be okay with it. He honestly had this sort of mentality. Okay, and a lot of white men do have it, right? That somehow or another I could treat people like shit, and they're going to want me. Blah 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 blah. Well, I don't. I don't. Okay. So scratch this dude off my list and I want him out of my way. Okay. And I'm tired of him putting all these responsibilities on my son. Okay. I honestly cannot stand this man. Okay. It's pissing me off. It's pissing me off like you don't even know. Okay. And then how the community could sit here and participate in it. The message I'm getting again is yes, there are angels up in those clouds. You know, I've noticed in my experience with Jehovah's Witnesses, like I said, they do some stuff that I can't. They do some stuff that really, like, how in the world could you even think that that's even something you can get away with, or that that's legitimate, or that's legal? It's like they don't think about these sort of legal ramifications because that doesn't exist in their world, and they're not supposed to think outside of the box of anything other than what's in the Watchtower Tract Society. You know, I feel as though this whole issue is very dark, and I understand what the CIA did many years ago and how they did all this sort of like, you know, working alongside churches and stuff like this. But see, what happened was you kind of ended up corrupting the spirit of, you know, what people should be doing. It became a place where people could spy on each other. Ended up corrupting, you know, the whole idea of, you know, I hate using this term, but you know, the Christ consciousness. You know what I mean? It became where people, it became all the countries that people left, it became the countries that people left. This very same thing that people didn't want to have to deal with, they ended up dealing with. Okay. Like, you know, I'm sitting here in the United States and worried about, you know, if I do this, am I going to have to pay the consequences? I should feel free and comfortable. Wiggle room, move around. You know what I mean? I should not have to justify whether I want to wear a sweater or I want to wear a, you know, a t-shirt or whatever. And I certainly feel pissed off at the fact that a man that I've long kicked out of my life is pressing me to the wall, asking me to justify what I do. Okay. I don't know where Sarah is at this point. I really don't know. Okay. But either way, you know, he obviously had some sort of idea of marriage to where he did not value women. I don't believe that he valued Sarah, because if he did value Sarah, he wouldn't have had anything to do with my life. Okay. And he obviously didn't value me. It's like, you know, like I said, you know, Bruce is human scrap heap. Okay. That's all I need to say. I do believe that my son is waking up to the fact that Bruce is human scrap heap. You know, and the message I'm getting right now is yes, there are angels up in those clouds. So Bruce could be dead. He might be. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't like to think about people. You know what I mean? But the feeling I get about the people of my past is like, how can you think that I could forgive this? You know what I mean? I can't forgive it. You know what I mean? I'm suffering for what they did. And there is no way in the world, like, I can't, it does not, you cannot justify it. You cannot sit here and act as if that I'm even halfway responsible. I'm not responsible for any of it. And I do know that he was complaining. Some people were complaining because, you know, I look younger than my age. Okay, this is genetics. Okay, then they were complaining about the food that I eat. Why should I justify the food that I eat to anybody? Okay, this is what pisses me off. And then they try to sit there and hone in on me and bully me and then try to force me into something for unnecessary, and all because of what Bruce wanted. You know what I mean? Yes, this, to me, Bruce is a threat to national security. You know why? Because of what he just did. Okay, the dude should be considered a terrorist as far as I'm concerned. The message I'm getting right now is that all is well with the Quarterly Blessing Newsletter. I hope you guys liked it. I really enjoyed writing that. Okay, But, I enjoyed writing the fun parts, okay? I don't like talking about the same issue over and over again, but it's always in the back of my mind because I'm dealing with the residual effects of it, okay? I'm dealing with the residual effects of it, okay? And I shouldn't have to, okay? Because I didn't ask for it, okay? And neither should my son, okay? Bruce was a deceptive person, and he deserves to pay the price for everything that he done, everything he's done, okay? And it's like, I can't believe that he would actually allow my son to have to carry the consequences for what he did. Okay. And then when it comes to the Gordon kids, the kids of 533, I cannot tell you how much I have nothing but hatred for these people. And my intuitive message that I'm coming up with is that my son also agrees with me. Why? Because these people have created something that they wanted to leave us holding the bag for. You know what I mean? It's like I remember I told my family I did not want to marry Bruce. I wasn't going to marry Bruce. So then they get together and then they follow me here to Bakersfield, orchestrate my employment, right? Then harass me, right? While Bruce is married to Sarah, right? As if I should supposed to sit here and pay attention to anything this married man is supposed to be saying after our relationship has long ended, right? The message I'm getting right now is that yes, I control a reality and something. Oh yes, Bruce was interested in leveling me for my resources. Okay, how dare you? How dare you? Bruce has no right to ask me for shit, for nothing. Okay, and so yes, I'm unhappy with the CIA's involvement at this man's instructions. Okay, because he didn't deserve it. Okay, and I'm upset because at this point I am sitting here struggling. Right, with the community was helping Bruce Collins, and I'm sitting here struggling. Okay, I'm struggling to get myself out of a situation that the community assisted me to get in. Okay, the message I'm getting right now is that so many people agree with the childhood happiness issue, and that something about Vladimir Putin wants to communicate with me. He can communicate with me anytime he wants to. I don't really check my social media that much though. What else? Um, okay, what is it? Okay, hurry up. Okay, well, I'm glad that Trump supports me. I'm very glad about that. But I'm tired of the slowness. Okay, like I said, I was willing to look for work in other locations or work remotely or whatever. You know what I mean? But here's the issue: when it comes to remote jobs, I do think that remote jobs need, like Indeed.com. Okay, you're the CIA. Okay, you're the CIA. Indeed.com, that needs to get cleaned up. That needs to get cleaned up. And maybe you guys need to work with this together or whatever. I know at one point the CIA would have been responsible for things like human trafficking. Now is your time to come clean and fix it. Okay? Now is your time to come clean and fix it. Fix all of it. Okay? And how can you do that? It starts with job boards. Job boards. Okay? Job boards can, oftentimes post jobs to either traffic individuals or deceive them into wasting their time for harassment, being set up for harassment or something else. Okay? No, these job boards need to be legit. They should be legit. Okay? So the message I'm getting right now is something about my father in spirit form. And yes, my son is handling the rent. Okay, which I understand we do owe the rent, but the fact is that the rent was delayed because of Bruce. Okay, because of Bruce, and something about Bruce coming to understand something about me and Vladimir Putin's past life. So Bruce wanted to stop that. So Bruce wanted me to prevent me from living my life so that I can cater to a man that abused me. Yes, okay. Like I said, I don't know. I am beyond disgusted by Bruce. Okay. And like I said, if there was some way where he should, stand in front of the firing squad, then that's what needs to happen to him. Okay. And I don't care what happens to this person. Okay. I don't care how he mistreated me, and he abused my son. Okay. The message I'm getting right now it is understood who King Solomon was and that he abused a chosen one. Now, I do understand the CIA understands things like chosen ones. You guys understand that sort of stuff. And you probably were concerned about my psychic abilities. I try to mind my own business. This is one of the reasons why music is so important to me. I drown the outside world out as much as I possibly can. Okay, you got to understand, I'm actually somebody who would be very good on your team. Not that I want to work for the CIA, but I would be a great team member for the CIA or the FBI. Why? Because, like I said, I can know anything. I can gather information if I wanted to, and I know that I don't have compelled to tell anybody. I don't need to tell people what I find out or anything. So, like, if you ever have it in your mind that you want to bring me or recruit me on your team, I would be one hell of an agent. That's for damn sure. Okay. But anyway, the message I'm also getting is that workplace education really, you guys are impressed with my workplace education. I'm just trying to make sense of everything. Okay. I mean, I'm trying to untangle all of the confusion in society. One of the things that I noticed is that people don't stay in their jobs for very long. Okay, people like me. I'm 50. Oh, I'm going to be 55 in a few days, right? And I realize like I have no retirement. I have nothing. Okay, and why is that? Why is that? Because I made a decision 32 years ago to have nothing to do with the same person who ended up bulldozing my life. Okay, I'm beyond pissed off about it. And then he turns around and expects my son to sit here and carry the load and have to figure out how to pay the rent late because this is what he did. Okay. Yeah, I hate Bruce. Okay. I am not going to be lenient on this issue. Okay. He literally had no right to be a part of my life. So when it comes to, law enforcement, getting involved in people's personal stuff, you need to set standards to not do this. The intuitive message I'm getting right now is that something about me and Vladimir are above authority. That's not true. Okay, that's not true. CIA. I think a lot of religious people were upset because if I am not religious, then who keeps me in line? Who keeps me in line? The law keeps me in line. Okay, and I don't even really need the law because I have no interest in breaking it. Do you see what I'm saying? So I don't have to. Nothing. I don't. Obviously, organizations like if you guys are working correctly, organizations like you keep people in check, right? Because if people go outside of those guidelines, then I'm going to deal with some sort of consequence. That is, of course, like if it was legitimate. Okay. Like let's just say, for example, I got into the weird hot habit of building bombs myself, and I wanted to use those bombs on somebody. Okay. Then this would be some sort of cause of concern. What would keep me in line? The possibility of knowing I could get caught, the possibility of going to jail, the possibility of suffering the consequences for that. This is it. Okay. Now, I don't need people telling me how to live my life. I don't need people ruling over my relationships. I don't need any of that stuff. As a matter of fact, I would say that that's the most damaging thing you could possibly do to another person. You want to have a good relationship, you keep people out of it. It is what it is. Okay. Because, like I said, when it comes to relationships, that is something that can only be formulated. You cannot have true friendship, true platonic bonds, true romantic bonds, or any sort of bond, okay, with other people being the puppet master. Okay, I know that what happened within this little CIA co-op or whatever, I had relationships sabotaged. How bizarre is it for me to understand that Joel Graham was a part of the ops? That's strange, right? Because what you have done is you converted people into being spies. Okay. They were trying to make my son into a spy. Why? For Bruce Collins. Screw that dude. Screw that dude. Okay. Bruce Collins to me is like, is he a Judas? Is he one of my Judases or something? I don't know. But you know what? He does not belong in my life. Okay. And I'm beyond angry that you guys allowed him to be. Okay. There was no justification for it other than people's greed and their selfishness. Okay. And that's what it was. And then there were some people who might have been from the LDS church, which is even funnier, right? LDS church may have supported Bruce because in their mind, he's a man and I'm a woman. And therefore, somebody needs to lord over my stuff. Any loser bum could come off the street as long as he's a man, right? He could have sort of jurisdiction and dominion over Maria Gordon. Well, guess what? I need to have standards. Okay. And no, I do not need a man lording over my stuff. I'm a person all by myself. Please stay out of my business. I never signed up to be an LDS member. Okay. So how is it that an LDS church member wants to sit here and counsel a so-called Jehovah's Witness that doesn't even participate in his religion to try to bound together a woman who doesn't want anything to do with organized religion. Where does the LDS church fit into this equation? They don't. Okay, so this is what I'm saying is that people had their own reasons and motivations for jumping into this. Okay, and all of it was inappropriate and it was extremely damaging. And this is one of the reasons why you find me making a lot of videos about this, because I need to release a lot. I need to release a lot. Okay, Bruce affected my ability to find a job. Okay, he wanted me to fit some sort of standard to some sort of Jehovah's Witness. I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. Okay, and I'm angry that he would even think that I would want to have him back. Okay, right now my life is about forward movement. I want new people in my life, and not even really want that many people in my life. Okay, so right now I'm thinking about Vladimir Putin. I'm also thinking about certain people who belong to my soul tribe, other people who, who kind of have my experience. Okay, I'm being very reserved. I don't want to be around a bunch of people. Okay, because I know what other people have been allowing to infiltrate in their mind. There's a lot of brainwashed people out there, and I don't have time for them. Okay, but what I feel right now is I'm very concerned about my son. Okay, I'm tired of the abuse that Bruce has afflicted on my son. I do not find it forgivable. It's not acceptable. Okay, and I'm beyond angry that people would think that I'm supposed to be held responsible for any of it. Okay, because I'm not. Okay, I was held captive in a situation that I should have never been held captive in. The message I'm getting is I am safe and the main perps are dead and defeated. It is known that I should be safe and that it was all their fault. Okay, that's good. Also, I did know that you guys are talking about there might be some newsreels talking about this whole issue about education. The fact that these people led all of these people astray. And yes, they should be held accountable for it. Why? This is where they were bragging about what they had. They were constantly trying to compare and one up me. They were trying to make me feel bad about the abuse that they inflicted on me when I was younger. These people, I'm going to tell you what, some of these people who are part of these like covert programs and they're religious based, some of these people are outright monsters. They lack empathy. They lack empathy. Okay, how is it that you can sit here and run down a person year after year after year after year, follow them everywhere, destroy their reputation, give them absolutely no, what do you call it, reprieve, constantly 24 hours a day with their nonsense, okay? And then they sit there and they want to rub it in your face. They're evil. Okay, I dealt with I don't know how or why, somebody thought that this was okay, like for these people thinking that I have some sort of assignment. Like I heard some of these tarot readers, your assignment, my assignment is nothing. Okay, because what these people were trying to do was enact harassment out on an individual. Okay, and I find it offensive. I am not going to cooperate in your harassment campaign when it comes to Bruce and his stupid ideas. Okay, what Bruce needs to do, like I said, I would love to see his ass sitting in front of a firing squad. I bet he never thought one day what the day would ever come that I would ever say something like this. He probably thought I didn't have it in me. Oh, she doesn't have it in her. She's into Hello Kitty. He probably thought it was dumb. Why he thought it was dumb, because I do get the intuitive feeling that he wanted to convince himself that I was dumb. But the reason why these people were complaining about me at Murray Family Farms and stealing my ideas is because they knew that I was the best. Okay, but for whatever reason, Bruce felt like he wanted to make it seem as though had no value, I was this and I was that, and he was the main driver along with Rashawn and Jim Culligan and all of this. Okay, and throughout all these years, Rashawn has been sitting here protecting Bruce Collins when Rashawn told me when he first met Bruce that Bruce looked like a pussy. That's exactly what he looked like to him. Bruce and Rashawn never shut up about how much he hated Culligan. We used to call Culligan Man, like the commercial, right? Everybody in that group hates each other. They all hate each other, okay? So I am just absolutely disgusted by all of these people. All of them, okay? But when it comes to, like, Bruce of all people, okay, has absolutely no right to even think that I would want to do any sort of thing with him at all. Okay, he is like, he is like the lowest of low. Okay, and I'm very upset of how he treated my son. I'm very upset how he treated my son. Okay, and it goes unspoken, right? But there's a part of me, my heart, that is broken by how he treated my son, and it was unnecessary. So, you know what? Like I said, that dude deserves to be placed in front of a firing squad. You know what I mean? And if it was legal, then I would have it so to where me and my son could shoot him to death because I'm beyond angry at him. I don't forgive him and I don't feel sorry for him. I really don't. Okay? After 12 years of constant harassment and being involved in this covert operation, you know what I mean? I'm also, I understand that my mother must have had a lot of self hatred for her to sit here and back Bruce. She must have, okay? Because really, there's no reason for her to have done that. I never had what do you call it? I realized that my relationship with Bruce was toxic. Okay, so I ended up leaving that relationship, and that, like when I hear about people like some of these tarot readers, they'll sit there and talk about my ex, right? And when they say it, it sounds as like my ex from it, like it just happened months ago. And I'm like, do you understand how long it's been that I've even considered this person? And then I started getting angry all over again, right? Because I feel like somebody's trying to attach themselves to me. The answer is I don't like people attaching themselves to me. And this comes from a very long period of me being CB Berganza. I only want you if I want you. If I don't want you, get the hell away from me. Okay, and I'm very protective of my space, which I have the right to be, because I've only dealt with garbage my entire life. And one thing I don't need is garbage who wants to sit here and mend forces with groups like the CIA, because then it becomes illegal. Okay, so there's a lot of people who come in with their personal agendas, is what I'm telling you, CIA, and FBI, and law enforcement in general. Okay, people come at you with their little personal vendettas, okay, and you need to not be biased about it, because whoever assisted Bruce must have been one racist piece of shit. I will tell you that right now. Okay, because there's really absolutely no reason to help Bruce other than you being a member of the Ku Klux Klan or something like that. I would love to ask you, what in the world were you thinking when you assisted that evil person? He was evil, you know? So, like I said, he's a hypocrite. His mother's a hypocrite. I don't want to have anything to do with these people. I'm somebody who's devoted to my mission. My mission is to not be a burden on anybody. Okay, and yes, women do need to work. They do need to work. Okay, and women should not have to be expected to give up their life just because, like, because I'm a single woman, somehow I shouldn't be wearing nice clothes. Well, of course I still love myself. What am I supposed to do? Fall down dead and forget about anything that I care about? Have no will to live? You know what I mean? No, I don't find anything to live for outside. What I live for is for me. And if I didn't have those things, I wouldn't care about life at all. Obviously, I walked away from a life that I didn't find satisfying, which was among the Jehovah's Witnesses and their weird hypocritical stuff. Let me tell you, some of these people, these Jehovah's Witnesses, they secretly want to kill you. This is the reason why they contact, organizations like the CIA or stuff like that. So anyway, you already know where all this is going. But my point is that if you are anybody, whether you're a senator, a governor, a mayor, or you belong to a member of law enforcement, or you have some sort of position or whatever, you need to be grateful that, number one, you have a job, okay? But you also need to understand that a lot of times people just want to bring you into their personal dramas. Bruce wanted to bring me into his personal drama because he wanted clout, because he knew that he could be on top, whatever, okay? But the thing is that you need to use discernment when you decide to lend your hand, and also associate your profession as well as your organization with other people's foolish plots. Okay, because whoever got involved in this, I know a lot of people are not here anymore, and a lot of people ended up losing their jobs, all because of people taking an interest in something that they should not have taken an interest in. There's a organization and there's an organization in place for everything. So, like, let's just say, for example, we were supposed to divvy up assets. If I was legally married, that would be divorce court. Okay, it doesn't have anything to do with your employers. It doesn't have anything to do with it. See, I am beyond angry that I'm sitting here, struggling financially, all because Bruce wanted me to. I was never legally married to Bruce. Okay. Yes, I had Houston legitimately. I left him off the birth certificate, Bruce's name off the birth certificate, because I was ashamed to say that was his father. Lo and behold, right? Lo and behold, loser, 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 loser. Okay. 32 years down the road, confirmed loser. Okay. So anyway, I'm gonna get off there right now and until I start getting upset later and then coming back and making another video, okay? Because like right now, I am beyond pissed off, okay? And I'm going to continue to be pissed off because I try to find work and I deal with people, Bruce sitting here trying to latch on to me or thinking that I'm some sort of last resort or whatever, okay? But I'm done. I don't want to have any more of this garbage going on. I'm sick of it. Okay. And I hope that going forward, no other woman has to put up with this. Okay. Women need jobs just like everyone else. And it's not about, flipping the bird to men. It is not about trying to, disrupt anything. Okay. It's reality. Okay. It's reality. I have no one to lean on. And no, I don't feel comfortable. See, Bruce is a loser. Okay. He has no problem sitting here thinking it's okay for my son to carry the weight or carry the load for his fuck up. Okay, but I do because I believe each generation should improve themselves, and he just set mine back. Okay, and for that reason alone, I really don't care what happens to Bruce. I really don't. So I'm going to wrap up this video, and I'll be back on another video sometime later. Take care. Bye bye.